so he's not going to be able to join us. So let's kind of jump into it real quick. I've got a quick little message that I want to share. So have we talked about the mindsets that you have to have when you meet with a client for the first time? Have we talked about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, you and I, some of what we're doing or what you're going over, you and I have been down the path a little bit already. I mean, you know,
Awesome.
you and I were 3-4 weeks into it, I guess, you
Sure,
know, so
sure.
we're kind of doing a little backtracking, but yes, to answer your question.
Okay, so have we talked about the 3 different mindsets that you have to have? As it relates to the understanding the self-appointment, understanding the laws of being a giver, taker, or matcher, and then the law of follow-up?
No.
Okay, so
No.
this will be perfect tonight. Okay, so one of the things that has grown very apparent to me that I used to do in my business that a lot of us struggle with is obviously setting the stage of expectations in the very beginning of our conversations with our clients. We've talked about framing ourselves so that people see us for who we are and who we want them to see us as opposed to us being pigeonholed into their perception of, you know, who we are based on their experiences. And I think a lot of times we don't ever communicate enough value with our clients in the very beginning to actually feel like we have something to say. So we tend to just jump right into the tactical side of our business, which, for a lack of a better term, is the very commodity that we're trying to get away from. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the three different mindsets that I felt like was always very important to me was understanding the self-appointment. So the first law is the understanding of the assumed close. I never started a conversation with a client until I believed that I was going to get the loan. So I didn't go into, I needed to convince them that I was the best person for the job. I simply assumed that as soon as I started talking about my value proposition, that they would be attracted to me. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do the loan with me. It just meant that they were going to be attracted to my style of doing business, which helped kind of pave the way for expanding my brand. And I've said that to you in the past. My brand was never mortgages. It was always about expanding the triangle of trust, getting people to adamantly go out there and refer me to the people they care about. And that was my brand. So my number one goal was to fulfill a need that they had, regardless if it was just information, whether it was helping them figure out the best course of action. But in doing that, I always had this, I don't want to call it arrogance, but I always had this high level of confidence that if I could talk to you as if you knew that I didn't want or that I didn't need your business, that I wanted it, that you would ultimately be willing to work with me regardless of whatever the product, the process was, if I was competitive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the first one was always, I always had that belief that it was an assumed close. I didn't sit there to try to convince you that you needed to work with me. I simply told you my value proposition and positioned myself from a place of, I want to work with you, I just don't need it, but I'm very selective on who I work with. The second one was very eye-opening to me when I really started to go back and peel away the layers of the onion, and that was, there are 3 different mindsets that we have when we enter into a relationship with a client. We have the mindset of either being a giver, we have the mindset of being a taker, or we have the mindset of being a matcher. Of the 3, and I'm pretty sure you can probably define all 3 of them for yourself. But if you were to take those 3, the giver, the taker, and the matcher, who do you think is the least successful of the 3 personality types or mindsets?
Least successful is probably the giver.
Okay. Why do you think the giver?
Well, actually, I take that back.
Okay.
I would say that the taker, because it's, to me, that's more of a transactional thing. I'm going to take what I can get while I've got it.
Sure.
The giver is, I mean, my mindset is I'm a giver from the standpoint that, you know, I'm giving of myself and my time, but I would say that from my standpoint, the most successful would probably be the matcher, because if I can't do it, I'm going to do what I can to find a solution, if one exists, to help the client, the realtor, whatever. So I guess the taker from process of elimination would be the least successful.
Okay. Well, would you be surprised if I told you that your first answer was right?
The taker is?
No, the giver.
The giver, yeah.
The giver is the least successful of the three personalities. The taker is mildly successful because they are just opportunistic. They just take, and they reach some level of success, but it's never consistent and it's never really significant success. The other is the matcher, and the matcher is actually not as successful as the taker, only because they don't have a clear and concise definition of who they are consistently, and it affects a larger part of their clientele, so they always kind of muddle through it. The least of the three, again, is the giver, and the reason the giver is the most unsuccessful is because you give of yourself every single day unconditionally, and you fall into this rut of, I never feel like I'm ever reaching that point where I feel like I've hit my stride, because you're always giving yourself and you're never getting much in return. We kind of accidentally get business. So to your point about the recent activity that you have, there was no premeditation. You didn't have an expectation that that was going to happen. You didn't know, based on the volume of business that you're doing and the conversations that you're having. It's kind of like you don't have a volume knob to your business where you just kind of turn it on and hope that the volume is at the right level. The point is the giver personality usually ends up Charlie Browning it, and that to me means that he's always looking down at the ground, kicking the rocks, because after a period of time, you just feel kind of beat up and you don't feel validated. You feel like you give of yourself, but it's never giving you what you hope to see in return. Meaning you put your heart and soul into every file, and we've agreed that your greatest reward is getting your clients to recognize your value and then advocate your value to other people. Fair?
Yes.
So the truth behind it is that the giver, when you really apply it to your mindset, is just you do a great job, and that's how most of us are, but we never see the value of what we put in return. So there's no reciprocity. On the flip side of that coin, the most successful is also the giver, but there's one slight change to what the giver does. And the person that's a giver who has a request amplifies their success rate almost by 60 to 70%. And the reason is because a giver understands their value, understands what they're doing, recognizes the value that they're providing to the consumer or to their audience, and understands that most people don't recognize the value unless it's spoon-fed to them. Now, spoon-feeding might be a little bit childish to say, but I've always believed that I was never going to simply hope that people saw my value. I was never going to count on my audience to just do what I'm hoping they would do unless I ask for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got to set expectations, right? I mean, you know.
Well, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. The point of the expectations are, we have when we sit in front of our audience, whether it's realtors or referral partners or it's our clients, they put all of the expectations on us. We literally are a order taker for what the consumer wants, because we sit down and believe we don't have any worth, and therefore we simply have to take what they make us do and do our best to it, and then kind of bend to whatever their needs are at the moment. I don't think that that's a bad mindset, but I believe that there should be, or there needs to be, and can be, a very partnership-oriented relationship between the client and the audience and yourself. And that starts with making sure that A, you understand your value, B, you communicate your value, but you also identify that you have a request as well. See, part of the opening presentation that I used to do was always about positioning myself as into, I want to work with you, but my business is very selective because of how my relationships are all intertwined. If I can't deliver what your needs, wants, and goals are, it makes more sense for me to say I can't help you and point you in the direction that you might be able to be served better, because all I want you to do is go back to that referral source and say thank you. But in the event that we work together, in the event that we've come to the agreement that it seems like we're a good fit for each other, I'm going to put a couple expectations on you that I'm going to need you to commit to. One is that you go back to the person that referred you to me and say thank you. And the second one is that you're going to go out there and advocate me to the people in your life that you care about, because that's how I'm able to serve you at the level that you want, because you're returning the favor and you're showing me how much I mean to you, because this is my request. And it allowed me, through the conversations that I had during the process, whether it was the pre-qual stage, contract negotiation stage, or getting them to a closing, there were always conversations that were always tied to that initial request. And that was always, hey, don't keep me a secret. Hey, remember when we first talked? Or, hey, by the way, Mr. Keel, it's been about 45 days since we started the process, and I understand things are going really well, if that's true. I got to be honest with you. Is there something that we've done that has made you feel uncomfortable in referring us? And most of the time, the client would go, oh, my God, no, I just haven't ran across anybody. You know what? I totally get it, but most of my clients by now have referred me to somebody that they care about, and not that I'm asking you to do that right at this moment, but when they don't, it always makes me believe that we should be doing something more to help you through the process. And the conversation that happens at that moment is so much more meaningful and so much easier when the expectation was set in the very beginning. See, Bobby, I truly believe that you are a giver through and through. I think that's why your first answer was correct, because I believe you approach every relationship that you enter into with a giving mindset. The problem is that your instability or your ebbs and flows in the business come from the lack of consistency in providing your clients with a clear and concise expectation that you have of them. When was the last time you expected something from your clients? I mean, we expect our clients to return our calls and to send us over the documents that we ask, and we assume that, but we never really make that a part of the conversation when we first meet. I tended to make sure that my clients knew that, especially when I gave them the 100 things that could go wrong. I gave them that expectation that this was something else that they needed to commit to. So I'm wondering, as you navigate through these loans that you have coming in, this recent activity, are you looking at your relationships as being simply a transaction or a tit for a tat, closed-ended transaction where you do something, get paid for it, and move on? Or do you look at the relationship going, I've put my blood, sweat, and tears, or I will put my blood, sweat, and tears into this relationship. I want to get something more out of it, meaning I believe I get paid in two separate categories. I get paid from the bank that I close your loan with, but I also want and need and expect that my clients also reward me for my hard work by referring me to the people they care about. Because if I'm simply a lender at a bank or a credit union or guaranteed rate or the internet, I'm going to get paid on a loan for doing a job. But I believe that the value that I provide is significantly more. Therefore, I believe that my request is warranted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I haven't done that in those exact words, but I have, since our conversations, I have asked for that in one way, shape, or form throughout the process and at the end of the process.
Awesome. So when you ask for it, you said in the beginning of the process?
Well, not so much in the beginning. I haven't really done it in the beginning as much as I have during the process and at the end of the process.
I would challenge you, if you're open to this, because I think that you would have a greater success rate if you started your entire relationship with that foot being your first step and everything else falling in behind it. And this is why. When you agree to do business with somebody, we've had that conversation about going to a rock concert. If I told you I was taking you to a play, or I was telling you I was taking, here, there's a perfect one. I told you I was taking you to go see a Christmas play. And you and I showed up, and we ended up going to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And if you've ever seen them, it's kind of like a heavy metal concert for Christmas. It's pretty spectacular. But if you showed up with the expectation of it was going to be, you know, We Three Kings and Oh High, you know, Silent Night, Holy Night, done by a very, you know, like by a church choir, you might feel like you were misled because of your perception. The reality is that my perception of what I wanted is totally different than yours. And so when you first enter into a relationship, if you want to have the greatest success at using those conversations during the process, you almost have to come to an agreement with your audience before they move forward with you in the transactional side of the business. Meaning that if you can come to terms with it in the onset and they go, you know what, Bobby, you're absolutely right. I would love to help you with your business, because if we go back to that whole 60% of the audience will gladly help you if you simply ask, but most of them will help you a lot quicker with a lot more enthusiasm if it's what they agreed to in the very beginning. One of the local banks around here that I do business with, or used to do, I started working with because they were open 24/7. I'm not sorry, 24/7. They were open 7 days a week, and I had a valet business and and some rental property, so I always seemed like I had cash on me, and I wanted to be able to go deposit it. After I joined the bank, they started to ask me to refer my friends and family, and they would offer money up sometimes to be able to, you know, to be able to entice me. And when I ended my relationship with the bank, I'd been there maybe 6 years. I look back and go, there wasn't one person I referred to them. And I thought to myself, it was really because I didn't join the bank to help them grow their business. I joined the bank for my convenience. But if the person that signed my accounts up sat down with me and said, listen, Mr. Cadaret, part of joining our bank is that we want to provide the greatest level of service possible. And by doing that, we spend a lot of time, you know, with our patrons, and we invest a lot of energy and time making sure that we're meeting all their financial needs. By doing that, we want to help you grow. We want you to help us grow our business by referring us to the people in your life that you care about. But see, that conversation was never had. It was brought in, and I was a commodity. I was brought in for the convenience, but yet I was repeatedly asked over and over again to refer my friends and family. It's not that I couldn't refer. It's not that I didn't even want to refer. But the truth was that it wasn't an agreement that I had with the bank when I first started it. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think the success rate of your requests as you're doing it through the process and at the end of it would be greatly improved if you came to that almost like a verbal handshake with your clients before you started one conversation about the mortgage business. Because then they move forward feeling like that was an agreement that they had, and it makes the conversations A, more natural, B, more relevant, and C, greater likelihood that they're actually going to do it because of when you ask. So if you look at how you get your conversation started, like for me, it was always as soon as my clients acknowledged, you know, Doug, thanks for the call, or hey, that was great news, or blah, 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 it was a signal that as soon as a client said thank you to me, I always said, you know what, Bobby, thanks for noticing. You know, back when we first started this relationship, and I always refer to it as that, a relationship, we'd made the agreement that we were going to deliver on our, you know, our side of the business, which I assume that we are, and you made the agreement to refer us. Are you still feeling comfortable that that would be something that you could do through, you know, as you talk to your friends and family about your home buying process? Oh, absolutely, Doug. It's just a more natural conversation because it was something they agreed to before they started doing the loan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And the last piece of the mindset, there was the self-appointment, or the, you know, the assumed close, the understanding the laws of, you know, being a giver, taker, and a matcher. And then the last one is the follow-up, which it sounds like you do very, very well. But the quote, we've heard that the devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard that quote before? Well, the fortune is in the follow-up. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about. The devil's in the details, which means that you get consumed every single day by the minutia and the chaos and the stress of the actual transaction part of the business. The problem is that we typically get so caught up in the details that we lose sight of how we set the priority in the beginning, how we set the expectation in the beginning, and how during the process, every time we find a way to communicate or do something for the transaction or help our clients out by managing their fear in some way, shape, or form, we miss out on the opportunities that are laying in front of us to help amplify that initial conversation. That's why they said the fortune is in the follow-up or the follow-through. I truly believe that while we're in the loans every single day, when we get to the place where our clients recognize our value, that we follow through on the expectation that we set in the beginning. And it's just a real difficult piece for a lot of us to handle because it's so foreign to us, because we get into that, I want to just get it off my plate. It's a task. It's a phone call. It's an email. I've got to call and ruffle some feathers. But the truth is that if you took a step back and said, what I'm about to do is either going to get something off my plate, or it could be something that provides me with a chance to reiterate what the expectation and the agreement was in the very beginning, which if you think about the process, you probably get thank yous and acknowledgments all the time from both the listing, the selling agent, and the client. My process was honed to where I had 5 specific conversations about my business model from the initial phone call until closing. And I only had 5, so that meant that there were 1 call at the end, 1 call at the beginning, or 1 conversation at the beginning and 1 conversation at the end, but I had 3 more scattered throughout the process that when I got the appraisal back, when I got my approval, and when I got my clear to close. And each one of those stages was the initial expectation conversation at the first meeting or the first phone call, and then the appraisal came in, the approval, the clear to close, and the final closing. But each one of those offered me up a chance to reiterate or circle back or follow through on that commitment that they made in the very beginning. See, the devil in the details is being caught up in all the crap part of the business, when in reality, the follow through on, if you're going to do all that dirty work, you might as well take full advantage of it and get something out of it. And the ability to get something out of it is really coming from the place of, I'm looking for that thank you from my client. And as long as I get that, then my work in the mud is worth it, because I'm going to circle back to that original conversation and make sure they realize they made a commitment to refer me. So as you go through the process of these new loans, I want you to recognize how you could amplify that relationship to get the most out of it besides just a paycheck at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm writing some notes. Yes, it does.
I'm recording this call for you, so you'll be able to you'll be able to listen to it again as well. So the whole message for me is as you get the activity coming in, it's great to get the loan in, but I honestly believe that if you're able to set the expectation up in the beginning, then you're able to do a really good job through the process. You literally amplify your success rate of getting new business by 60 to 70% if you put the initial conversation up front with the request and do everything you say you're going to do and follow through on that request during the process.
Right.
So if you look at how many loans you've got in the pipeline, I would love to see those loans turn into 1 or 2 more leads. I mean, let's say you got 3 transactions going at the same time. It isn't uncommon to see at least 1 referral out of those 3 before they close.
Right.
And that's free business. And that's business that you can leverage to another relationship or another realtor, or circle it back around to one of the realtors that referred you the business in the first place, which makes you significantly more valuable to the realtor because A, they don't do it, and B, no other lender is able to do it, and C, it puts you in a place where you're not just as good as your last transaction. You're
Right.
significantly better than that because you're providing them with another transaction just by doing the work that you do every day anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Comprende?
Say again?
I said comprende. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So how is that different than the way you're handling your business currently?
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, I'm doing more of that than ever.
Yep.
What I'm not doing is probably setting that expectation up front, and then maybe not, well, not maybe, but not being consistent with the asking, if you will, or asking them to hold up their end of the bargain, so to speak, during the process.
Right. Think about that for a moment. We want to be more than just an order taker and a commodity. I mean, truly, we want to be more than a commodity, because between you and me, I hate being treated like one. But we don't do ourselves any service by not acting as if we are more than just a commodity.
Right.
The initial conversation is really an elevation of your value and your worth, and you're not going to assume that they're going to see it. You're going to make it abundantly and brutally clear with them, because if they agree to move forward with you, you're going to commit 100% of your blood, sweat, and tears. You're going to give them more value per pound than any other loan officer that they would be shopping you against at a local bank or credit union or the internet. The truth is that you want them, if they're going to go out and shop, because that's going to happen, everyone does, you want them to compare everyone else to you. You don't want to be compared to everyone else. And it starts with the framing and the expectation of what your value is. And I think the moment you can start that from the very beginning of your initial conversation, just strengthens the future conversations that you're going to have, because they agreed to, I mean, this was part of the agreement. And I'll tell you, it may sound foreign, it may sound uncomfortable, a little bit choppy, but I have yet to meet a client that, after I explained that to them, said, that doesn't really sound like what I want. Every client sees that if I'm willing to pour my blood, sweat, and tears into your loan, knowing full well that there's 100 things that can go wrong, I'm going to do this for you. But I need your help on something, because they don't know how much we get paid. They don't even care how much we get paid, because they don't, as long as the rate's competitive, they're good with it. Yeah. So in their mind, the ask or the request is simply an agreement that says, I'm willing to thank you for doing the job that you said you were going to do, and this is my way of giving you back something. You don't make any money on them directly, so they're left giving you all the commands, all the responsibility, and all the commitments. It's not unreasonable to ask your clients for that commitment in return, and every single client will commit. Now, whether or not they do it or not is 20% will, 20% won't, 60% will if everything falls in perfectly. The truth is that it's about a 30 to 40% of your pipeline every single month. Whatever pre-quals and loans you have actively in your process, you should expect about a 30 to 40% conversion ratio. So 10 pre-quals and 10 active loans in the pipeline, you should be able to get at least 3 to 4 referrals out of that pipeline every month.
Right.
Does this resonate at all with you?
Yes, it does. Good. Yeah, I mean,
so what?
I'm kind of like a sponge right now. I mean, I'm just, I've mentioned stuff, that I'm, I read a good bit, look for different, just different ideas, different thoughts, different ways of doing business, different ways to differentiate, obviously from a coaching standpoint, it's something that I think is beneficial, and has been beneficial, working with you over the last, month and a half.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me just kind of change gears because I'm working through some planning for next year.
Yeah, you want to talk business planning?
Yeah, yeah, kind of goal setting kind of stuff for both personal as well as professional or business.
Yes.
And one of the things I'm looking at is just different marketing ideas. So based on, and maybe you didn't do any of this, but maybe you either didn't do it, didn't need to do it.
I did. Believe me, when you hear my presentation on the whole business plan, yeah, you'll know that I did it on a regular basis.
Well, what I'm getting at is around the marketing side of it is what things did you find work for you? I mean, and I guess what I'm getting at is I'm thinking about like some first-time homebuyer webinar, or not webinars, but seminars where I'm kind of putting a personal touch with as close to handwritten notes as I can, directly say to a specific apartment complex,
Right.
or complexes.
Right.
I am licensed in 2 states, so Birmingham, my current city, Sylacauga, I mean, it's somewhat limited, but I can go to Birmingham and there are all sorts of apartment complexes that I could market to. Same thing in Atlanta. I mean, I was talking to my oldest son who was over last week, and he and my youngest share, they're roommates, and I was asking them. Now, part of it's location, but it's it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, and I had an idea what they're paying for rent, but I didn't know exactly. And they're paying like $1,400 a month, and I'm like, son, that's a good sized house, payment. I mean, more house than you need, kind of thing, And so, I'm just thinking, a lot of people, you'll get some traction on this. You may not get a lot, but if it generates some business that I could then, hand off, if you will, to my business partners, I mean, that to me just helps. In mind, and I don't see why I would with them, and obviously hand it to the right partner, but
Right.
Help get them referrals or business that
Right. So
free.
So let me first tell you that I've never been a big proponent of all the new and shiny objects that are out there to help you create business. I've just never really gravitated towards that because I never felt like it worked well for me. So let me just start off by saying that there's probably 1,000 different ways to accrue new business. Mine was always just very relationship oriented, and because I didn't believe in those new products or those new techniques or all the things that are available, I always just used my ability to meet with my clients and connect with them as my greatest tool. So let me just start by saying that. So with that being said, I analyzed my business every year. Have I showed you my lead tracker? Did I ever show you that?
No.
Okay. Are you by your computer?
Yeah, I'm in front of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Can you turn your computer on for me and just take a look at something?
Yeah, I'm on.
So do you see my screen?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
What's that? Okay.
I'm on go-to meeting. I see it now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So, for example, December of 2007, I go all the way back to, I think it's like 2005. let's go April. So as an example. So here's an example of one of my lead trackers. You'll notice that there's realtors. Well, I'll scroll all the way down. So these are the categories in business. You see them: current client referrals, past client, personal friend, realtor, and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I did was I analyzed my business every single year. So I took a look at where my pillars, which are those columns, CCR, PCR, PC, PF, and realtor, those are my pillars of business. I knew that at any given point in time that my business was 63% on one pillar, and that was my past client database and my current client referrals, the 2 pillars. So I knew where my greatest strength was. I knew where my greatest ability to originate loans came from. And so my marketing approach was, if I like doing something, A, I'm more likely to continue doing it, and B, if I like it, I probably am going to attract more business anyway because I'm kind of in my zone, so to speak. I always approached my year end with an analysis of my leads, which you and I will eventually get into tracking that. But the goal was that I wanted to do the least amount of work possible to get the most amount of results. Like, I didn't want to chase ghosts. I didn't want to throw ads up. I didn't want to do home buying seminars. I didn't want to do any of that stuff because I learned that the amount of time and effort that I would have to invest to get that result, I would be better off calling my database, my past clients, and hanging around my realtors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for me to give you a pinpoint direction as to what the best way to accrue new business is, but I will tell you that based on what I know of you right now, I think any time that you can add more business to your pipeline by doing the things that you're already doing, but just simply making a request, will probably yield you a 20 to 30% increase in overall leads over the course of a year. So if you knew that you got 100 leads over the year, and one of your approaches to this was, I wanted to increase my current client referrals, because A, it's free, you're doing the work for it anyway, and if all you had to do is just change one conversation in the beginning and add a couple different conversations through the process, and you could increase your leads by about 20 to 30 annually, and out of that, if the rule of 30 applies, then out of that you'd get another 10 closings. I don't know how much 10 closings is worth to you, but in my world it was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I look at your business from a statistical standpoint, I would say, which pillar do you get the most amount of business from? So I have one loan officer I'll give you right now. He has 5 pillars. He had his database, he had his personal friends or social, he had his social media, which was his Facebook, he had his realtors, and he had his current clients. His past client business, his conversion ratio was, he would get on average about 2 leads a month, and he would close about 1 of those a month. So he was batting about 50%. His realtors would give him about 20 leads a month, but he would only convert about 2 of those transactions a month. So that meant that if you were to compare his current client or his past clients versus his realtors, he spent a hell of a whole lot more time chasing realtors and having to talk to 13 people or 15 people just to close 2 loans, whereas he only had to talk to 2 people to close 1 loan, which meant that he freed up a lot more time. And the reality was that the loan volume of his past clients was greater than the loan volume of his realtors. Mm-hmm. And so I asked him, I said, your business plan that you submitted to me says attract more agents. And I said, you can do that. I said, that's not a bad deal. But based on what you're doing, you're going to have to talk to 15 more people a month, so a total of 30 to close 4 loans. That's a lot of work to talk to people that don't know you, like you, and trust you. And I said, that's going to be difficult. I said, now, if you want to analyze your realtor business and go, instead of attracting more realtors, because I think he said he had 7 realtors that gave him those 15 deals. Mm-hmm. I said, instead of going out there and trying to find 7 realtors, why don't you try to filter out the realtors that aren't giving you the quality of business that you need, or start having more meaningful conversations with your agents. But instead of soliciting new realtor relationships out in the market by cold calling them every week, maybe what you should do is take a look at your pipeline and go after the listing agents on the transactions, because that's the chance that you have to capture a very captured audience by talking to them through the process and showing them what you can do firsthand. So just by analysis there, we figured out that he could attract 7 new realtors, and he's going to do that in the first 2 quarters, based on the listing agent approach, not do anything with regards to just cold call and marketing new agents. And he was going to focus on improving his conversation in the beginning and during the process with his current clients, because current clients turn into past clients. And if he could increase his current client referrals, his database is going to be improved because he's going to find that he's got more time to solicit that database because he wasn't before. They just called him because he's been in the business so long. And he realized that he didn't need to spend any money. He just needed to refocus where he was really passionate about and where he's really happy being, and it allowed him to understand that he could be more committed, and it would be more, it almost would be more guaranteed that he'll stick with it because he's working in his sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know. That may not be the answer you were looking for, but if I'm going out there and approaching home buying seminars, I'm looking at how much time I'm going to spend doing it. And I'm not telling you to not do this, but I would tell you to make sure you track the time that you spend invested, track the number of leads you get out of it, and then track the successful closings that you get out of it, and see what that does by the end of Q2, and ask yourself, is it worth it? And then ask yourself, of the pipeline of business that you're getting, where is most of your closable deals coming from? And how many times do I have to talk about myself to somebody before I get them? And I bet you'll find that your conversion rate is stronger with your past clients and your current clients and a select group of realtors than it'll ever be with a home buying seminar.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Right.
I'm just speaking.
I guess was, part of my thinking is getting the name out there. A lot of people, I don't know. I guess I just think that, if you're putting your face out there, over basically, it just helps, the recognition standpoint of it, I guess.
I'm going to tell you that you are 100% correct by making that assumption. But what I'm going to tell you is that your face is not the reason why people are going to call you. The reason they're going to call you is because of your message and why you do it, because everybody puts their face out there. Right. Everybody believes that that's how they attract the business. The truth is that you would do far better for yourself if you made the commitment to say for the first 3 months or end of Q1, I'm going to make a commitment that every application that I take, I'm going to make that expectation conversation a focal point, and I'm going to track how many times I reiterate that through the process and look at what your success rate is in comparison to what you're doing with your home buying seminars.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I don't want to go out there and take the time and effort and money, and it's not a good use of my time or return on investment.
And I'll be honest with you, Bobby, I'm lazy. Okay, I'm going to take on the world and work till midnight every night. I've got 4 kids. My wife and my wife's a loan officer. There's a lot of things that I enjoy doing more than I want to, than I do originating loans. And so my number one goal every time I planned out my year was, what do I have to do to increase my business by whatever the amount was without having to put more work in it that was necessary? So when I looked at my pillars, I always focused on, okay, I like the realtors that I have. If I want to add more, I'll just focus on a listing agent campaign. Mm-hmm. Instead, I found myself more often than not looking at this lead tracker every week, or actually it was opened up in my business every day, and asking myself, where's my business coming from? And then finding where my sweet spot was. And for me, it was picking up the phone and calling my active pipeline, always trying to help fill a need. The other piece of it was calling my past clients. I did really well with that. And it was more successful for me to spend an hour a week calling my past clients or figuring out a letter that I could write to them or mailing them out a newsletter and just calling them up going, hey, I was thinking about you, than it was for me to go sit down and do a home buying seminar. And I did a bunch of home buying seminars. And I experienced the lackluster results. And the truth is that me getting up and teaching a class never really worked for me in business. And I know people that are successful at it, but for me, it just wasn't my thing. And so when I analyzed my business, I realized that if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to go out there and talk to my financial planners. I'm going to go out there and talk to my realtors. I'm going to go out there and talk to my attorneys and CPAs. And then I'm going to call up my past clients. And then I'm going to talk to my current clients. And they were pretty much in that order because that's where my business was generated from, and I didn't have to do anything more than just do what I love doing, and I was effective at it. So my batting averages were significantly higher than me going out there and putting my face out there, which in all fairness, that's the traditional marketing approach that I think most consumers see right through, and they don't really give a shit. They have the internet. Honestly, Bobby, if you think that that a client's going to show up at a home buying seminar and learn something from you that they can't find online, you might be right, but I think generally speaking, the ones that show up are the ones that are just tire kicking and that are there just to waste their time, and who knows? I think your greatest success is focusing on what your God-given strengths are, and that is getting people to like you, getting people to trust you, and getting you to showcase your efforts through the process, and then capitalizing on that momentum with the listing agents and capitalizing on that momentum with your clients. That's just my 2 cents.
No, it makes sense. I mean, and that's kind of why I asked you. Like I said, I'm working through trying to figure out what makes the most sense to do right now.
Right. I would tell you, if my first step would be, I don't know if you track your business like I did. I don't know if you know where all of your leads are coming from, where all of your leads are at currently. But if I'm looking at starting the new year off on the right foot, my first thing would be I would call every single one of my active pipeline and have a very honest conversation with them about how thankful you are that they've chosen to work with you, and how you're super excited to have them be part of your business plan for 2017, and explain to them what your business plan is. And that is, you've chosen, instead of going out there and being honest, I frankly, Mr. Client, I'm looking at my plan for 2017, and I'm working with one of my coworkers, and he said to me, he goes, I could do home buying seminars, I could do some mass mailings, I could do some social media, Trulia, Zillow, whatever. And I said to myself, I'd rather just spend a lot more time and energy helping my clients go through this process that, for a lack of a better term, is very, very difficult.
Right.
But I'm hoping that if I do this for you, can I ask you a favor in return? Because it's harder to do during the process. It's so much easier to do it when you first meet them. But just have that honest conversation and try to get them to commit to working with you. And everybody will. Everybody's going to want to help you. But the more vulnerable you are with it, the more vulnerable they will be, and the more vulnerable they will be, the message is received at a deeper level. And I promise you that if you have that conversation and you actively remind them, you might see some pretty instantaneous results, and you're going to look at it and go, I'm not really spending any more time doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're just being more intentional. You got me?
Right. Yeah, that's good advice.
It worked for me, brother. I
Yeah.
hope it will work for you, but I honestly think that it requires a little bit of, just humility and genuineness, and just being very vulnerable with your clients. And I think when they see that and they get that, and I think the perfect time to have those conversations is after you've gotten them to say thank you to you for something. Like, I don't think you should just pick up the phone and go, hey, you got 5 minutes of your time. It's more or less do what you're doing, wait for that moment where they say thank you, or orchestrate one of those situations where you know they're going to say thank you, and go, hey, listen, you know what, thanks for noticing. Can I bend your ear for 5 minutes about something? Because once they say thank you, they're open to receiving what you have to say.
Right.
Okay, brother?
Yep.
Good call?
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Awesome. Man, I felt good. I felt it was a good call for me today, too. I felt like I was in the zone.
Well, good.
So, awesome, brother. Hey, I appreciate your time. We'll pick this conversation. Hey, do me a favor, if you could. I don't know what your business looks like, but I would love to see, if you broke your pillars down, like, I want to know what your volume goal is for 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your volume? How many units? Because I'm sure you know your average loan size, volume in units, and what we'll do is we'll spend, between now and before the end of the year, we'll spend some time talking about how to analyze the different pillars of business where you're going to get them from, and come up with a very simple and very manageable and accountable business plan that literally you can look at every single day to ask yourself if I'm hitting it or not.
Right. Okay.
Okay? So
Yep.
if you could have that put together for me next week and we'll chat.
All right. Works for me.
Have a great week, my friend. Thanks for taking the time to spend an hour with me.
All right.